This is the only video you need to start healing after narcissistic abuse and finally feel like you again. I'm going to explain how narcissistic abuse affects your brain, your body, and your beliefs so you can stop blaming yourself and start taking your power back in love. If you've ever left a relationship feeling like you lost yourself, this course will finally explain why and how to start finding your way back. My name is Rebecca P. Fox. I'm a psychotherapist who helps people heal from trauma, especially after toxic relationships, so they can get into healthy relationships. In this full course, I'm going to share with you 6 powerful pillars that are going to help you feel more confident, more grounded, and ready to trust yourself again. But before we do dive in, I need you to really hear this, because once you understand what I'm about to explain, this is when you're going to finally stop blaming yourself, and that is where your healing truly begins. Coming out of a toxic or narcissistic relationship, it can leave you feeling like a totally different person. You will catch yourself acting in ways you don't even recognize, thinking things that you never used to think before, and speaking in a tone that doesn't even sound like you. And eventually you wonder, well, what did happen to me for me to get to where I am? Here's the truth. You didn't just get hurt in that relationship. You got rewired. Because narcissistic abuse doesn't just break your heart, it changes your brain. It teaches you to associate love with pain. It teaches you to question your instincts, to second guess your memories. And eventually, you'll end up doubting your own worth. And that's when you start to wonder if you're someone that can ever be loved. Because in the past, you gave it your all. You believed that love meant putting someone else first, and that's what you did, even though it cost you your peace. And I want you to know this. The love you experienced, that wasn't real love. It was manipulation. It was emotional warfare that was carefully constructed, designed to control you. It was a performance by that person. And that's why naming what happened to you is so important, because once you can name it, you can then stop blaming yourself. You can then stop thinking, what's wrong with me? And start asking the right question, which is, what happened to me? So if you haven't done so already, make sure you've downloaded my free narcissistic abuse workbook. It is linked below. Also, grab yourself a pen and some paper so that you can take notes throughout this course, and pause me at any time. It would be a very good idea to download this video now as well, just in case you lose access, and then you can always come back to it as and when you need to. So let's get started. Pillar 1. How narcissistic abuse changed you. Let's get started with one of the most powerful tools a narcissist will ever use, and that is gaslighting. Gaslighting isn't just someone lying to you or denying what happened, which is what many people think it is. It's when they slowly convince you that your reality, it isn't real. And then they're going to give you a new one, which makes you feel like you no longer know who you are. Now, there is another ingredient needed for gaslighting to work, and that is trust. If you don't trust them, they can't gaslight you, because they've proven to you they can't be trusted, so your guard will be up and your boundaries will come in strong. And if you're thinking right now, but Rebecca, I don't have any boundaries, don't worry, because I'm going to go into depth about this later in the video, so you will have boundaries. You see, gaslighting only happens when they distort your truth so thoroughly and deeply that you begin to question your own mind. And here's how they do that. It is all done verbally. So they will say things to you like, you're too sensitive. And this is usually when you're trying to express your emotions and they just want to shut them down, because the last thing they want is for you to have emotions that they have to, quote unquote, deal with. And then what comes next is, that never happened. You're imagining things. And this normally happens when you saw something like them texting another woman and you decide to confront them about it. And this is when you try and set or hold a boundary. And then the next thing that comes out when you've caught them red-handed and they know you've caught them is that you are in fact crazy. You're always the crazy one who overreacts. That is the classic line that is used to isolate you and make you believe that you're too much for anyone else to love. And that's when the next form of gaslighting comes into play, and they then make out that no one else is ever going to put up with you, only them. And this is done to make you believe that you are the problem. I mean, do any of these sound familiar to you? Let me know in the comments what they used to say to you. Because gaslighting in a nutshell is the ultimate weapon when it comes to gaining control over you. And here's what happens over time. Those tiny injections of doubt, they become a repetition. And they get to the point where you just stop trusting your own mind. You start apologizing for things that weren't even your fault. You begin tiptoeing around their moods. You lose your voice because it was never safe to use it in the first place. And even when you did speak up, well, you were always wrong anyway. So why bother saying anything? And this is how your nervous system gets trained to live in survival mode. So even now, months or years later, you might flinch when someone criticizes you. You might freeze in conflict. You might even question if your pain is valid and what you're feeling is actually real. Or worse, you start to wonder if you were in fact the abuser and you're the narcissist. But look, I want you to know that none of this is your fault. That's trauma. That's survival mode. That's what happens when love is used as a weapon. And the hardest part of this was that in the beginning, it never felt like abuse. Because let's be honest, at first, they felt like your soulmate. They mirrored your dreams. They listened so deeply. They told you everything you've always wanted to hear. And they made you feel like the chosen one. But what you were experiencing wasn't love. I'm sorry to tell you this. It was love bombing. But before we get into the details of love bombing, here's a quick breakdown of what gaslighting really means so that everything else that follows is going to make total sense to you. So, what is gaslighting? Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation used to make you question your reality and give you a new one. It is not just lying. It is way deeper than that. It involves denying facts, twisting events, and planting doubt consistently over time. The ultimate goal with gaslighting is to make you doubt your memory, question your instincts, and to stop you trusting your own judgment. Common gaslighting phrases include, "You're too sensitive. That never happened. You're imagining things. You're overreacting. No one else would put up with you." And that often leaves you in a position where you're apologizing for things that aren't even your fault. You will walk on eggshells and you're going to feel confused, anxious, and like you are the problem. And the result with gaslighting is that you lose trust in yourself and become easier for the narcissist to control. You become like a puppet. So let's get into the depths now of love bombing. Love bombing is a calculated tactic that narcissists use to hook you fast. It's powerful, it's intoxicating, and it's meant to feel like a fairy tale so that you end up letting your guard down. But here's what no one tells you, and I really wish someone had told me this before, and that is that real love doesn't rush you. Real love takes time. But love bombing, that does rush. Love bombing, it floods you with attention. It drowns you in compliments. It overwhelms your nervous system so that you stop thinking clearly. And you start saying things like, "No one's ever made me feel this special before." And that thought alone is a red flag. In the early days, that requires you to take a step back and slow things down. But of course, that's the love bombing trap. It's fast, it's intoxicating. So let me break down what love bombing looks like. Let's start with mirroring. You like dogs? Suddenly, they're a dog person. You dream of kids in the countryside? Well, guess what? So do they. And it's only later that you realise they never meant any of it. They were just performing. They were just saying what you wanted to hear because they were mirroring you. They future fake. Within 2 weeks, they're talking about marriage, kids, dream holidays, and it feels thrilling, but right now it is just all talk because nothing is anchored in reality. They're going to overwhelm you with attention, good morning texts, late long night calls, the thinking of you messages that you get 20 times a day. You're going to have pet names like baby, honey, love, but they're going to rarely say your actual name because to them, you're an object, not a person. And the chances are this is also because you are one of many. And they don't want to risk getting your name wrong when they overwhelm you with attention. And you are going to start to think that someone has finally seen you for who you are and appreciates you. But what this person is really doing is flooding your nervous system. So you stop thinking clearly and all you can think about is your perfect relationship and future with them. So what is the narcissist's end goal here? Why do they gaslight? Why do they love bomb? It's all to do with emotional capture. They're not falling in love with you. They're crafting an ideal version of themselves to hook you. And once you're in deep, that's when the mask is going to slip. So let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah met her ex on a dating app. And on the second date, he told her she was the most incredible woman he'd ever met. And I do agree with him. But by week 3, he had sent her flowers to her work, bought her tickets to her favourite band, and introduced her to his parents. He even cried during one of their deep late night chats, saying he felt so safe with her in a way he'd never done before. Sarah was hooked at this point. She felt seen, wanted, and adored. She even told her friends, I think this might be it, and that's what she told me too. But in month 2, things started to shift. He started making small digs, asking, why are you wearing so much makeup? Even though it's the same amount she'd always worn. He claimed that he saw a guy flirting with her and she let him do that, which wasn't at all true. He just didn't like her talking to any man, even if he was serving her a coffee at Starbucks. Then he started claiming that she never messaged him first anymore. Instead, he was saying that she was putting in minimal effort, which made no sense because nothing in her mind had actually changed. And then what happened? He decided to emotionally withdraw. He became cold. He gave her the silent treatment. And when he did speak to her, well, there were more accusations. There were mood swings. And this is something Sarah felt like she had to manage. She kept trying to get him back to who he was at the beginning, this sweet, attentive, loving man who made her feel like a queen. But here's the thing. That man, he was never real. He was a strategy, a carefully created version of her ideal man designed to hook and pull her in. But real love, it doesn't do that. Real love doesn't punish you with silence. It doesn't shame you for having a voice. It doesn't create highs so intense that you lose your balance and then call it passion. Real love, it builds slowly. It earns trust. It honours your pace, your boundaries, and who you are as a person. Love bombing. It's possession dressed as passion. But here's what real love feels like. Real love doesn't need to rush. It doesn't demand access to every corner of your life immediately. It isn't a performance. And if you're watching this and thinking, that was me, that is exactly what I went through, but I just didn't see it. Please know that what you went through is not because you're stupid or weak. It's because you were kind, open-hearted and hopeful. And you had hope for the future and someone, likely a narcissist, took advantage of that. But you're here today. You're watching and listening to this video and you can learn the signs. You can heal these wounds and you can carry love again with clarity. Now that you understand how narcissistic abuse rewires your sense of self, let's talk about what it leaves behind, the invisible wounds. When you leave an abusive relationship, you might expect the pain to stop, but instead, you find yourself questioning why you still feel so broken, even when they're no longer around. That's because the damage wasn't just emotional, it was also psychological. It was somatic and neurological. And unless we name these wounds, you'll keep mistaking trauma responses for personality traits. So let's name them first, and then I'll take you through actionable steps for healing them. Number 1, hypervigilance. You check your phone 20 times for a reply. You overthink every full stop and every word that's written. You watch people's tone, their facial expressions, their silences. It's like you become a detective scanning for danger. You don't feel safe in calm anymore, and that's because you were trained to expect the storm. Number 2, trust issues. You crave intimacy. But when someone gets too close, your body reacts and you sabotage. You pull away, you panic. And it's not because you don't want love. It's because your nervous system now associates love with harm. Number 3, self-abandonment. You were conditioned to keep the peace, to not rock the boat, to swallow your needs just to avoid conflict. And now you've done it for so long, you don't even know what your needs are anymore. You say yes when you want to say no. You smile when you're actually exhausted. You put everyone else first because that's how you survived. Number 4, perfectionism. You tell yourself, if I can just do it right this time, maybe I'll finally be safe and I'll be accepted. You obsess over your tone. You replay conversations in your head. You agonize over text because somewhere along the line, you internalize this lie. You believed that you were the problem. You believed that your mistakes justified the abuse that you experienced. Number 5, fear of being seen. You learned that vulnerability could be turned against you, that opening up could cost you everything. So now you shrink, you withhold, you disappear in plain sight. You don't let people see the real you because last time you did, they used it to break you. These are the silent scars. They won't show up on x-rays, but they do live in your nervous system. They will show up in your choices, your relationships, your thoughts. So let's look at how we heal them. Actionable steps to heal the invisible wounds of narcissistic abuse. Number 1, hypervigilance. I'm going to teach you the 5-4-3-2-1 technique, which is how we do somatic grounding. This is one of the most shared and recommended tools for trauma survivors with overreactive nervous systems. It reconnects with your body to the present moment, and it works by reactivating your parasympathetic nervous system. Your rest and digest state needs to be reset. I'm going to pull you out of survival mode with this technique. So before you read messages or after a triggering conversation or anytime your body goes into scan for danger mode, I want you to bring in this technique, and this is how we do it. You can sit or you can stand, and I want you to name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste or imagine tasting. For me, it is always chocolate. Then I want you to take 3 deep breaths to close. Real deep breath in and out through the mouth. 3 of those to reset. Now I want you to open your Confidence After Narcissistic Abuse workbook and turn to the Emotional Awareness journaling pages. These are 16 to 28. Hypervigilance is rooted in the nervous system's inability to detect safety. Your journaling prompts on emotional triggers, opposite emotions, and pattern recognition are going to help shift the focus from scanning to understanding your emotional landscape. So take some time working through this section of your workbook, and of course come back to it as many times as you need. Number 2, trust issues. Rebuilding trust, it begins internally. Writing to your future self is a powerful tool, and your workbook covers forgiveness, pride, and self-promises. These are all key steps to restoring your inner trust and stability. So turn to page 48, Letter to Your Future Self, in your Confidence After Narcissistic Abuse workbook, and write a letter to your future self that contains what you're ready to forgive yourself for. I also want you to include in this what you're proud of. And look, just doing this course is something to be proud of if you're struggling to find things. Also, what promises are you making? Are you going to be committed to this process? And I also want you to ask yourself, who are you becoming? And I want you to answer that. Do you look like a woman who is confident and comfortable in her skin? Are you somebody that's able to confidently set boundaries and execute them? This is how you create space for healing and slowly build the capacity to actually trust again. And it's okay if you don't know all the answers yet to these questions. I want you to just be patient and kind to yourself with this process. You may need to do a bit on this each day or over a week or so just pace yourself. Number 3, self-abandonment. I want you to do daily yes/no check-ins. And while this sounds boring, reconnecting with your authentic yes and no is step 1 to reclaiming your needs. You can set phone reminders 2 to 3 times a day with the question, what do I need right now? And then follow it up with, am I saying yes to myself or am I just avoiding conflict here? Then I want you to act on one small need. Is it rest that you need? Is it water? Do you need to say no to something or someone? This is going to really help you build your self-trust muscle, and it's going to help reverse the fawning reflex that kept you safe in the past. There's also a fantastic exercise in your workbook called the Daily Self-Worth Reboot. This is on pages 10 to 13, so be sure to work on that exercise to add more impact to your healing. Number 4. Perfectionism. I invite you to the Messy Action Challenge. This is all about taking imperfect action on purpose to help break the perfectionism cycle. Here is how we do it. I want you to choose one small thing that you've been overthinking. Maybe it's a social media post, an outfit you're unsure about, or a message you've been drafting and then deleting. It should be something that feels safe enough to try, but still brings up that little bit of anxiety or self-doubt. So you're going to set a timer for 10 minutes. You're going to give yourself permission to complete it without overthinking or editing. And this is with the goal of aiming to be done, but not perfect. Then I want you to say this out loud, even if it feels silly, okay? Done is better than perfect. I am safe, even when it's not perfect. And then I want you to do it. Post the thing, send the message, walk out the door in the outfit. This is what messy action is all about. It's a powerful way to unlearn perfectionism and rebuild self-trust. You see, perfectionism itself comes from fear. It's a fear of being judged, rejected, or just not good enough. But every time you take action without obsessing over every detail, this is when you teach your nervous system that you don't have to be perfect to be safe. You don't have to do any of these things to be accepted or loved. And eventually, this is just going to rewire your sense of self, believing that flawed is in fact unsafe when it is not. Perfectionism is a coping mechanism, and on page 29 in the workbook, you'll find the old versus new self, which is an exercise that challenges you, and it visually gets you to separate those survival patterns like overfunctioning or fawning from your empowered self. So be sure to do this exercise around your perfectionism. Number 5, fear of being seen. Storytelling in a safe space is super powerful. I'm talking about spaces like support groups, therapy, or even voice notes to yourself. I promise you these are just as good. This is what's going to help you rewire the brain's fear around vulnerability. This is going to create a new association that you can be safe when you share and you are not going to be punished. You are instead going to be heard. So, how do we actually do this? This is the first step that I want you to do. I want you to record yourself sharing one story that you've never told anyone. I want you to say it from a place of reflection, not traumatization. Will you get emotional doing this? Quite possibly. But that's okay. You are designed to feel, so allow your emotions to flow when you do this exercise. I've done this a few times. I do this myself a lot. I often record things that I'm struggling with and listen to it back. Now, when you do listen to it back, I want you to listen to it with compassion and not judgment. This is so important. Just compassion. And once you've done this, there is an option to then share it with a therapist or a trusted friend. And I would encourage you to do that. But do ask your friends permission first, because not everyone is able to sit and listen to difficult stories. I also want you to head to page 40 in your workbook, the rebirth section, and write down everything you changed about yourself to survive your abuser. This isn't about shame when you do this exercise. This is the beginning of reclaiming your visibility, and I'm going to help you through this every step of the way. Pillar 2. Why you keep attracting the same type. Let me guess. It always starts with butterflies, right? You've got that spark, that rush. You tell yourself, this one feels different. But then weeks or months later, it starts to feel very familiar. You begin overthinking again. You find yourself walking on eggshells. You have this anxiety that creeps back in, but you don't know why you feel so anxious. And then you start to find yourself wondering, why? Why does this keep happening? Why do I keep attracting the same type of person when I actually know better? And here's the thing. It's not because you're stupid. It is simply because your nervous system is doing its job, but it's got the wrong map. You see, when you've been through narcissistic or toxic relationships, especially more than one, your body starts to store these experiences like a blueprint. Your subconscious doesn't go looking for what's safe. It goes looking for what's familiar, even if that familiarity is chaos. That's why someone who is kind and consistent might feel boring to you at first, but someone who's moody, mysterious, plays hot and cold, that feels like home, right? Therefore, you chase intensity instead of safety. Not because you want to, but because your nervous system's been conditioned that that's the right way. And that right there is what we call a wound connection. This is where two people bond through unhealed trauma instead of shared emotional safety. Trauma bonding versus true connection. Have you ever had someone who made you feel like you were their entire world one minute, and then the next, they treated you like you were invisible? That's not passion, that's trauma bonding. Trauma bonding begins when someone uses something called intermittent reinforcement, which is basically hot and cold behaviour that gets you hooked. 1 minute, they're giving you attention and affection. The next, they're withdrawing, punishing, or blaming you for everything. This creates a chemical roller coaster that makes the highs feel addictive, and before you know it, you're constantly chasing them. You want that high. So let me walk you through how this plays out so you can fully understand it. First, they're going to pull you in hard and fast. They're going to gaslight you. They're going to love bomb you. Then as soon as you feel secure, they're going to back off or they completely disappear. You panic, so you start to over-explain. You apologise. You chase them just to try and get them back. And then when they finally are nice to you again, you feel relief. Like you can finally breathe. And it's that relief that becomes addictive. So you just tolerate the lows. You forget about the lows because you just get the highs. That is what you focus on, and that is where the addiction comes into play. You're not connecting in these moments. You are surviving. And here's what makes this even more painful. You truly believe it's love. Because now your body associates adrenaline with affection. But that's not love. It's a trauma loop. Therefore, if you want to break this cycle, you first have to recognise what it really is. Let me tell you about Leah. Leah met someone who right from the start made her feel like she was in a movie. He told her she was everything he'd been searching for. After so many toxic women, he said she was a breath of fresh air. He'd text her first thing in the morning without fail. He would message or call her last thing at night. He remembered every single detail she shared. He even went out and bought her gifts. He painted this vivid picture of their future together within the first few weeks, and Leah thought, finally, this is it. This is the kind of love I've been waiting for. But just as she started to relax, everything shifted. He disappeared for a few days without a word. He'd come back acting like nothing happened, or even worse, he'd accuse her for being needy or too emotional. She would go quiet, whenever she tried to share her feelings because she knew he would twist the conversation. He would blame her and shut her down. So she just stopped speaking up. She just started walking on eggshells. When they argued, which happened frequently, it felt dangerous for Leah because it was so intense. He'd raise his voice. He'd accuse her of overreacting while shouting and screaming at her. She was petrified. But then he'd go about and send her a sweet message, saying that he missed her. He'd buy her another gift, compliment her after he'd just broken her down. So she stayed. She thought that was love. The highs, the lows, the chaos. She thought everyone goes through this, right? But it wasn't love. It was control through emotional instability. It was intermittent reinforcement at play. And it rewired her brain to crave the chaos. A year later, Leah found the strength to leave. After months of healing, she met someone new. And at first, she wasn't sure. There were no real fireworks. There was no drama. He was just this kind, normal, respectful, consistent guy. He would ask about her day. He listened to her when she spoke. He made space for her. And when they had a disagreement, because yes, healthy relationships have them, he didn't shut her down. There was one moment where she told him something he said in front of his friends felt dismissive for her. Now, in past relationships, that would have triggered an argument. She'd have been called too sensitive. She'd have apologised, then been ignored for 24 hours or so. But this guy, he paused and said, "I didn't realise it came across that way. I'm sorry if I hurt you. I'll be more mindful moving forward." There was no shouting, no guilt trips, no blame, no punishment. Leah told me that that moment changed everything for her because for the first time, she didn't have to shrink just to keep the peace. She was allowed to feel something and not be punished for it. Leah is still with that man today and it's been 3 years. They met on a dating app and she's finally found the kind of love that holds steady, not the kind that holds her hostage. So, what's the difference? Trauma bonding feels like an obsession mixed with confusion, whereas true connection, that feels like clarity and peace. So the next time that you feel that pull towards someone, I want you to pause and ask, does this person calm my heart or do they just stir up my emotions? So the question comes, well, how do we heal the trauma bond? And I would love to be able to give you a magic pill to heal this, but the reality is that healing a trauma bond, it takes time. Your nervous system needs to repair, and deep emotional unhooking also needs to happen. But I can tell you that it is 100% possible. I speak from experience and expertise. Healing a trauma bond does, however, begin with facing the hardest truth. And that is that it wasn't love what you experienced, it was a cycle. I want you to write that down. What I had wasn't love, it was a cycle. It was a loop of highs and lows that taught your nervous system to confuse intensity with intimacy, to confuse pain with passion, and fear with affection. And even when it hurt, for you, it still felt familiar. And that's what makes it so hard for you to walk away from it. The very first step to breaking a trauma bond is to actually break the fantasy. Your mind is going to replay the good moments on loop, and you know exactly what I'm talking about right here. The soft smiles, the emotional highs, the times they said everything you wanted to hear. But healing can only begin when you stop romanticizing those moments and start remembering what it cost you. Not just the tears and exhaustion, but the parts of yourself you lost trying to hold on to someone who was never safe. This is your moment now to tell the truth. And here's an exercise I want you to do. I want you to write down what you miss, but I also want you to write down what it cost you. And I want you to keep that list. So whenever you feel yourself spiraling and going into that fantasy land, I want you to look at your list and let it remind you of why you are walking away. If you can, I also want you to go no contact. And if that isn't possible because of co-parenting or shared logistics, Then commit to low contact with structure. I want you to stick to short, neutral messages. No emotion, no explanations, no reopening old wounds, no questions. Just every time you respond with power and not pain, this is when you're going to weaken that hold they had on you. And this is a boundary that isn't just between you and them, it's between who you were in survival mode and who you're becoming now you're healing. Next, I want you to bring your body with you. Trauma bonds don't just live in your mind, they live in your nervous system. That's why calm people feel boring to you at first. And that's why silence, it often feels like punishment. So we need to teach your body that calm is safe now. Starting with just a small few deep breaths, going out and doing some grounding exercises, walking in nature, even washing your face with cold water, this regulates your vagus nerve. These practices will gently rewire the way your body responds to love and connection, but you must be consistent. Then comes the rebuilding of self-trust. And this is the most painful part of trauma bonding. It isn't just that someone hurt you, it's that they trained you to ignore your own voice. So now you begin every day by asking yourself, what do I feel? What do I need? What choice honours me? And you can use the pages in your workbook to go forward with these questions, to speak directly to the version of you that stayed small in order to be loved. Let your truth be louder than their manipulation. And finally, I want you to create a new map for love. The trauma bond is broken not just by walking away from what was, but by walking towards something better. I want you to visualize what healthy love actually looks like. Not perfect, but peaceful. Not explosive, but consistent. And what does it feel like to be respected, to be safe, to be chosen every day without having to earn it? I want you to let that vision anchor you. Let it remind you that you're not just healing. You're creating a future where your heart never has to live in fear again. If you would like me to do a meditation on this to help you, comment below and I'll make the video for you. Here is what I want you to know. You are allowed to feel that pull back to them. You're even allowed to miss them, but you're also allowed to choose yourself. Choosing yourself every single day. You are powerful for pushing forward and trying to break this. So if love for you meant staying silent, sacrificing or needing to shapeshift to keep the peace, it's no surprise that boundaries for you are going to feel dangerous. So let's look at how we change that. Let's look at how we're going to break down fawning so that you know your exact steps now on how to reclaim your self-worth. Pillar 3, the boundaries you were never taught. Let's be real. If setting boundaries feels hard for you, like really hard for you, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you've never, ever been taught that it's safe to have them. Your ability to set boundaries today, it was shaped by the love you received as a child. So if love for you meant keeping quiet, if it meant fixing someone else's moods by people pleasing or performing, if it meant shrinking yourself to feel safe, then of course you learned to fawn. You would learn to freeze, to run, to fight for scraps of affection just to feel seen. The thing is, kids do not learn boundaries by reading books about them. They learn them by feeling safe enough to have them. But if your emotional safety wasn't protected when you were growing up, you didn't learn how to say no and have that respected, you would have learned how to survive. You would have become hyper aware of everyone else's feelings. You would have over-explained, over-apologized, over-performed, until the only thing left to sacrifice was you. Therefore, your attachment style, it didn't start with some dramatic breakup. It started in those quiet, heartbreaking moments where you realised it wasn't safe to ask for what you needed. And that same wiring, the fear, the guilt, the tendency to disappear when things get uncomfortable, it's what's still running the show in your adult relationships. It's not that you don't know what a boundary is, you do. But every time you try and use one, it's your body that whispers, this is going to hurt, it's not going to happen. So you just stay silent. You twist and mold yourself into the version that actually gets chosen instead of the one who chooses herself. But here's what no one told you. Boundaries aren't rejection, they're protection. Boundaries, they aren't cold, they're deeply loving. Boundaries aren't the reason that people walk away. They're the reason the wrong ones don't get close to you in the first place. So if you grew up with chaos, narcissism, or emotional neglect, you were likely celebrated for being easy to love. But you were never celebrated, however, for having a voice and speaking up and saying no. You were celebrated for disappearing, for fawning, for people-pleasing. And these are the very same survival skills that have kept you stuck in unsafe love. And I say skills because you learned them, which means you can unlearn them. So let's talk about fawning and how people-pleasing keeps you in danger. Fawning is one of the 4 trauma responses. We hear a lot about fight, flight, and freeze, but fawning, it's the quietest. It's the most socially accepted. It's the one that is most likely to be praised. And here's the truth. Fawning looks like kindness, but it's really survival. It's a learned behaviour that whispers, if I'm agreeable enough, useful enough, quiet enough, maybe then I'll be safe. It shows up looking and behaving like over-apologising when really you've done nothing wrong. It's saying yes when your whole body is screaming, no, I don't want to. It's smiling when you're uncomfortable, just to try and make everything feel better. It's laughing to ease the tension so you don't have to say anything about it. It's shrinking yourself so that others can feel bigger. And in these moments, you're not being fake, you're being strategic. You've become so attuned to other people's moods, needs, and approval that you've completely lost touch with your own. This is what happens when freezing doesn't work and running isn't an option. Fawning is what becomes the safest choice, the one that keeps you connected, even to people who are unsafe. Because back then, disconnection for you, it felt more dangerous than staying. But here is the hard truth. Fawning doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you stuck. It traps you in relationships where love is conditional, where you only feel valued when you're useful, where your worth depends on how well you meet someone else's needs. You become the helper, the peacemaker, the fixer, and you abandon yourself over and over just to avoid the conflict or rejection. It can feel like peace, but it's really fear wearing a mask. Fear that if you take up space, you'll be punished. Fear that if you speak your truth, you're going to be left. Fear that if you're fully yourself, no one's going to stay. To fully understand fawning, you have to see it as part of the bigger picture. Your body's trauma responses are not flaws, they are strategies. Some people learn to fight. They become defensive or controlling, not because they're aggressive, but because being in charge for them, it feels safer than being vulnerable. Others are going to learn to flee, to run. They're going to stay busy, protective, constantly moving to outrun the discomfort they're carrying. Some, they go into freeze, that emotional numbness that gets mistaken for laziness when really it's the body saying this is too much and it just shuts down. But fawning is the response that says, maybe if I make everyone else okay, no one's going to hurt me. With fawning, it is not about hiding. It's about disappearing into yourself. It's about sacrificing your truth, your needs, and your identity, all in the hope that you're going to be accepted or at the very least not abandoned. And here's what's tragic. Most people who fawn, they don't even realise they're doing it because they've been taught since childhood that being easy to love means not having any needs at all. And I wonder, does any of this sound familiar to you? Let me know in the comments because it's great to share what we've been struggling with so you know that you're not alone in this, because I can tell you now you're not. So I want you to remember that fawning, it isn't a flaw. It's a trauma response. It's how your nervous system learned to survive in environments where being real wasn't safe. So when you people please, when you apologise for things that aren't your fault, when you silence yourself, you're not being fake here, you're being protective. But the trouble is, what once protected you, those behaviours, it's now keeping you stuck in unhealthy relationship cycles. So let's talk about how we unlearn it now, step by step. Step 1, pause and notice the pattern. Fawning is automatic. Most of the time, you're not even aware you're doing it. So the first step to healing isn't action, it's awareness. Catch yourself in the moment. Notice the tightness in your chest when you're about to agree just to keep the peace. Notice the urge to soften your tone or apologize for taking up time. And instead of shaming yourself, pause. Place a hand on your heart and say, this is me trying to stay safe. But I am safe now. I don't need to disappear. Awareness is your first step. Step 2, reconnect with your needs. Fawning trained you to focus on everyone else. Healing, however, it asks you to turn back inward. And I want you to use the self-worth reboot exercise in pages 10 to 13 to start finding your voice again. Doing these exercises is what's going to ground you in your truth, even if no one else validates them. Step 3, set micro boundaries. One of the biggest myths is that boundaries have to be big and dramatic. Well, I'm here to tell you they don't. The most powerful boundaries start off small. So let's begin by just saying, I need a moment when you're overwhelmed with something, or saying no thanks to an invitation you really didn't want to accept, or replying to that text straight away. These are small but powerful boundaries you can start to implement. You'll find more help on these in the workbook Setting Brave Boundaries section. As you start to strengthen this muscle, your nervous system is going to start to associate boundaries with safety instead of danger. And that is when the magic really begins to happen. Step 4, choose self-respect over approval. Every time you fawn, your brain is bargaining for connection. It's working overdrive in the background, saying things like, if I just make myself easy or available enough, maybe they're not going to leave. But true connection does not come from performance. It comes from authenticity. You don't have to become what someone else needs to be loved. You just have to become someone you respect. So I want you to ask yourself these questions. Am I choosing their comfort over my truth? Is my yes honest, or is it coming from fear? What would self-respect look like in this moment? And let me just give you a really simple real-life example of what self-respect can actually look like when you're dating. So let's say you started chatting to someone new. It's early days, it feels exciting, there's a little spark building. Then one evening, he messages you and says, send me a picture. And let's be honest, he's not asking for a photo of your coffee or your dog. You know exactly what kind of picture he means. Now, part of you might feel flattered, but maybe there's another part that feels a bit caught off guard. You think to yourself, is this a big deal? It's just a selfie. Everyone sends them. And you don't want to seem like you're not interested. And you definitely don't want him to lose interest, but here's the thing. If you send that photo because you feel like you should, not because you want to, that's not self-respect. That's self-protection. It's that little part of you trying to avoid rejection to keep his attention so that you don't mess it up. And that right there is the pattern we need to start breaking, because in that tiny moment, that one photo says something. It says, if he asks, I'll give. Not because he's earned it, not because there's real trust or connection yet, but because you're afraid not to. Self-respect in that moment is all about pausing. It's about checking in with yourself and asking, do I actually feel good about this? Do I want to? Or am I just scared he's going to lose interest if I don't? And if the answer is the last one, then that is your moment to stand in your power. That is your cue to not send it. Take a breath. Remind yourself, I don't have to perform to be loved. I don't need to earn someone else's attention by giving them access to me. Because let me tell you something, ladies, the right person, he'll never need proof. He won't expect access to you. He'll earn your trust slowly, respectfully, and with consistency. That's what real connection is built on, not pressure, not performance, not fear. So the next time you're in that situation, just remember, self-respect doesn't always look loud. Often, it's just one quiet, powerful decision to not do what doesn't feel right. And that's where your worth starts speaking louder than your fear. You'll find support with this in the old ways versus new ways pages. This is in page 29 of the workbook, where you can reflect on these patterns. Step 5, celebrate every act of self-return. Healing from fawning, it doesn't happen overnight. I'm sorry to tell you that. But every time you say no with love, every time you honor your energy, every time that you don't have to explain yourself just to avoid discomfort, you are choosing you. And that's the bravest thing you can do. You can close your day with a few lines from the rebirth section of your workbook so that you can reconnect with your truth. Because the thing is, when you actually stop fawning, you stop surviving love, and then guess what? You're going to start to receive it. Pillar 4, the 3-month rule. How to date without losing yourself again. All right, let's talk about something that could honestly change the way you date forever. You want to believe in love again. You want to trust. You want to relax, feel chosen, feel safe. So when someone comes along, and they seem genuinely into you, they're saying all the right things, they're affectionate, curious, consistent, it's really easy to start thinking, maybe this one's different. Maybe this is it. You get that warm feeling and you start to think about how good it feels and how right it feels. But here's what I really want you to consider. You know that feeling? It might not be safety. It might be familiarity. And as we know, for survivors of narcissistic abuse, familiar doesn't always mean safe. Now, this next part is really important, so I want you to write this down. Narcissists can't hold the mask for more than 90 days. Let me say that again. Narcissists can't hold the mask for more than 90 days. They cannot fake empathy for that long. They can't fake the consistency. They can't fake emotional maturity. Therefore, this is why the first 3 months of dating aren't your commitment window, they're your observation window. This rule is not about playing games, it's about protecting your peace. It's about giving your heart and nervous system the space to actually feel without rushing to attach. Why the mask slips at 90 days? Narcissists don't build relationships on substance. They build them on performance. Every grand gesture, every perfect compliment, every intense connection moment you have early on, it's all part of the hook. Not to be connected to you, but to be able to control you. They will study you. They're going to listen to you, but this is not out of care for what you're saying, but out of calculation. They want to know what it is you look for so that they can become that perfect person. They're going to figure out what it is you've lacked, what you long for, and what makes you feel special. And that's when they become it. You see, in the beginning, this is why they seem so perfect. As we know, they're going to mirror your dreams. They're going to reflect your values back to you. They're going to speak all of your love languages very fluently because I bet they asked you all about them. You're going to feel seen by the narcissist, but it isn't because they truly see you. It's because they know how desperate you are to feel seen. But here's the catch. Performing takes effort. It is exhausting to wear a mask 24/7, to maintain that persona, to keep the illusion going. And this is why by the 3rd month, the cracks, they are well and truly showing. Now, the shift might not be explosive. In fact, it's often very subtle at first, which makes it easy for you to justify. You will tell yourself, we all have off days, right? But I want you to pay attention. Pay attention to when they start to pull away, when they start to become inconsistent, where they're affectionate one day and then cold the next. They're going to criticize you very softly at first. The way you laugh, the way you dress, your emotional reactions, even your body. And slowly, you're going to begin to question yourself. You're going to start to explain more. to try and get them to understand because you think they're not quite understanding, or maybe you're not understanding, then you're going to defend yourself even more. Then you have to walk on eggshells. But here is where it gets tricky. By that point, you are already invested. You've bonded with the version of them they sold to you at the start, that fantasy. So your instinct right now is not to walk away, it's to fix it. You want to try harder. You want to give more. So you just tolerate more. All in the hope of getting back to who they were in month one, right at the very beginning. But ladies, we need to be honest now. That version of them, it wasn't real. It was nothing more than a costume. A carefully created character that you believed, you wanted. The truth here is you didn't fall for the person. You fell for the performance. And that is why the first 90 days are so sacred. Those 3 months, they're not about proving your worth. They're about observing theirs. This is your time to collect data. Not just about how they treat you when things are easy, but how they respond when they're not. Ask yourself, who are they when I say no? Who are they when I don't rush into this relationship? Who are they when the spotlight isn't on them? And this isn't about being guarded or cold, it's about being conscious. Because if you have lived through abuse, neglect, or trauma bonding, your body is likely to confuse intensity for intimacy. And it's going to feel normal to move fast because fast, that felt familiar. But as we know now, familiar isn't always safe. In fact, familiar is often what hurt you in the past. The mask doesn't slip because they changed. It slips because they cannot keep lying. And if you've been taught to chase love instead of receive it, you're going to miss the moment the lie begins because you're too busy trying to win them back. So here is your new commitment. I want you to commit for the first 90 days of any new relationship that you are not attaching. You are not projecting. You're not overgiving, over-explaining, or auditioning for love. What you're going to do is you are going to be observing. You are listening. You are feeling. You are letting time reveal what words can hide because the right person, they won't rush to convince you. They'll show you who they are slowly, steadily, and more importantly, consistently. And you'll realize that real love, it doesn't need a mask. It just needs time and truth. Okay, so let's get into one of the most powerful dating tools you'll ever use, emotional pacing. This is something that's going to shift how you date from here on out. If you are someone who's been through trauma or a toxic relationship where your nervous system probably equates fast with safe, this is when that person comes on strong, texting all the time, talking about the future, calling you their soulmate by date 2, all that exciting stuff. This is what we're going to remember, ladies. That rush you feel during that moment is a dopamine spike that is triggered by old survival patterns. So let me give you a real example. You meet someone, there's instant chemistry. You're messaging constantly, staying up late talking. You feel completely hooked. Every ping from your phone gives you butterflies. But when they take too long to reply, your stomach drops. You start second guessing yourself. You worry their tone has changed. You feel pressure to keep things exciting. You tell yourself it's a connection, it's got to be. But what you're really feeling is urgency, not safety. And that's why you feel so anxious. This is why emotional pacing becomes your protection. It allows space for your nervous system to regulate. It helps you see clearly rather than through the lens of fear or fantasy. And that's the shift we're making now. So instead of diving in head first, you just slow things down. You date with intention, not because you're guarded, not because you're playing games, but because your peace, that's your priority now. So that means you will pause before saying yes. You're going to check in with yourself instead of overriding that little knot that's twisting in your gut. You're going to stop trying to match someone else's speed just so that you get chosen by them. Because look, you're no longer performing for love. Here's what love looks like in real life. When someone asks to see you last minute, you pause. You ask yourself, do I want this? Or am I afraid to disappoint them? When someone texts late at night and wants to come over, you pause. You listen to the version of you that spent years saying yes out of fear of being rejected. And this time, you respond from choice, not anxiety. And here's something to remember. When you express your boundaries, someone will either respect them or they're going to reveal themselves through how they don't respect them. And it really is that simple. So pay attention to how they respond when you say, not tonight, I'm tired, or I've got an early start, or those times that you express discomfort in what they were asking from you because it made you feel a little bit uneasy. Did they lean in with curiosity to what they said that made you feel so uncomfortable, or did they just pull away and accept it? Did they honour your pace, or are they trying to be guilting you into speeding the whole thing up? This is the kind of behaviour that tells you who they really are, not the flattery, not the spark, not the potential. We've all been there. And I know that sticking to that 3-month rule for some of you can feel really uncomfortable at first, especially when someone challenges it or when that old part of you starts to worry that going slow means you're going to lose this connection. The fear for that is very real. And look, you've probably spent years learning to prove your worth by saying yes, by being easy, by giving more than you got. So now, when you try to actually slow things down, your nervous system might panic. It might feel guilty or even rude for setting a boundary. But that's not a sign you're doing something wrong. Ladies, that's a sign you're doing something different. It's a sign you're healing. So let's make this your new standard. You don't rush just because they want to. You don't give more than you feel ready to. You don't explain yourself into exhaustion just to avoid being misunderstood. What you do is you pace yourself, you breathe, and you stay grounded in your worth. Because we now know love isn't a race. It is not a performance. And the right person, they won't be in a rush to claim you. They'll be patient enough to get to know you. At the end of the day, they're planning on having a future with you. So you have all the time in the world for that. Pillar number 5, your post-narcissist dating app. This time, ladies, you are not dating to be chosen. You are dating to choose. You're doing the healing work. You've left the narcissist and you're finally breathing again. So maybe now you're thinking about dating, which is great. This is a good thing. But here's what no one tells you. And I really wish someone had told me this when I started dating again after the abusive relationship I was in. When you've experienced narcissistic abuse, dating for you doesn't just feel unfamiliar. It feels dangerous because your brain, your body, and your beliefs, they're wired for survival, not connection. So if you don't build a new map, one that keeps you anchored in your worth, you'll find yourself repeating the same cycles with different faces. So here's what you need now. A clear, honest, protective roadmap, a post-narcissist dating map that anchors you in your self-worth. It's going to keep your nervous system regulated and it's going to pace your emotional investment. This map is going to help you spot the difference between connection and control. And this isn't about dating with fear, it's about dating with clarity because, ladies, you're not looking to be rescued anymore. You're looking to stay rooted in who you are and choose someone who's going to meet you there. That's your new standard. That's your new map. So let's break it down stage by stage. Your post-narcissist dating map. 4 stages to date without losing yourself. So just a reminder, ladies, that this time you are not dating to be picked. You are dating to choose with clarity with your eyes wide open. Let's remember that. So number 1, pre-dating stage. Rebuilding your identity and nervous system. Before you go back into dating, you need to come home to yourself. Because if you start dating from a place of emptiness, looking for someone to fix you, save you, or complete you, what you're going to do is shape shift to earn that love. You'll mold yourself into who they want, and eventually you're going to disappear again. This is why you need to rebuild from the inside first, and this is when you're going to rediscover who you are outside of survival. So you're going to figure out what you want, not what you've been told to want. There's a big difference. You're going to regulate your nervous system so that calm feels safe again and not boring to you. You're going to build a life you actually like without a partner. When someone does come along, you're not chasing a role. You're actually inviting a match to come in to your life. Number 2, early stage dating. Connection without codependence. In the past, someone would show you interest and you would drop everything. You would text them all day. You would bond really quickly. You would call it romantic when it was actually just over functioning. So now you are going to move differently. You're going to pace that connection. You're going to share things really gradually because if we're honest, there was a lot of trauma dumping very early on, very quickly, right? So this time, you're going to let someone earn access to that emotional world of yours, to those experiences, as and when it feels right. You're not going to give up your daily routines or your friendships or your boundaries just so that you can keep their attention, because you're no longer trying to impress them. You're showing up as yourself. You're grounded. You're calm. You are present. And this is what makes all the difference. Number 3, deeper stage. Compatibility, vision, and conflict navigation. Before you mistook attraction for alignment, you thought clicking with someone meant compatibility, but it doesn't. Now you look for what lasts, not what excites you in the moment. You actually talk about your values, your goals, your visions, and the timings for these things. You pay attention to how they handle conflict, not just how they connected with you. You watch whether their actions actually match their words, and you don't ignore every single red flag that comes up. And when those things get uncomfortable, you notice, does this person actually shut down? Or do they actually show up when I ask them about these red flags? You're not looking for perfection, because it doesn't exist. You're looking for emotional maturity, and you are not afraid to walk away if it's not there. That is the difference this time. Number 4, the shift from performing to alignment dating. Let's be honest. You used to perform for love. I know, because I used to do that. You'd overgive, over-apologise, stay way longer than you should, and you'd become easier to love by becoming less of yourself. But that kind of love, it comes at a cost, and that price was you. But this time, you're dating from alignment. You are clear on your values, and you are screening to see if that person has the same values, same standards, and same goals of you. And this time, you're not afraid to leave early if something feels off and you're not aligned. You're not going to stay because you've got history or chemistry, or you see that there's potential there, which often isn't potential at all, it's just fantasy. You just stay this time when they're consistent, when there's effort that matches yours, when there is real compatibility based off your values, your standards, and your goals. This is not fantasy dating. This is grounded dating. Dating that feels safe, steady, and mutual over time, because you finally understand you were never too much. You were just with people who weren't ready for your depth. So before you swipe, text, or go on a first date, you're going to start here. You're going to start by rebuilding who you are outside of survival. Not the version your last relationship turned you into, but the version who isn't performing, fawning, or walking on eggshells anymore. And inside my workbook, that's what I'm going to walk you through so that you can do this without any fear. Once you have built that relationship with yourself, you will spot red flags so much faster. You will become so much more confident with actually setting those boundaries. You're not going to become trapped, and that's one of the biggest changes You're not just going to keep over-giving and changing so that you're accepted by someone. I want to touch on codependency because it's one of the most common patterns that shows up after surviving toxic relationships, especially after dealing with a narcissist. Codependency doesn't mean you're too emotional, and it definitely doesn't mean you love too much. Codependency happens when your identity starts to revolve around someone else's emotions, their needs, and their validation. The truth is, most people don't recognize codependency because it doesn't look dysfunctional on the surface. It looks like you're someone that's just kind. It looks like you're someone who's just really supportive, but underneath, it feels exhausting. It feels like you're constantly giving, and whatever you give, it's never, ever enough. And the reality here is that codependents are a covert narcissist dream partner. And I'm going to walk you through exactly what that looks like with these two types of people who are on a date. You go and meet someone who's quiet. They're emotionally open, maybe come across as a little bit damaged. And by the second or third date, they've shared stories of betrayal, childhood trauma, or how their ex never appreciated them. And you lean in, not just emotionally, but very much energetically. You want to be the one who does things differently. You want to be the one who gives this person a break. Because they're saying things to you like, I don't usually open up like this, and it seems like you're the only one who ever understood me, and I can't believe I've met someone like this. And then suddenly, without even realizing it, you're no longer dating. You end up managing this person. Their feelings become your responsibility. You stop expressing your own needs because you don't want to seem selfish. You find yourself constantly checking in on them, soothing them, giving them more of your time, your energy, your attention. And this is happening even when you're feeling unsure about how they show up for you. This is exactly how codependency takes root. It teaches you to earn love by over-functioning. It normalizes anxiety in connection. It keeps you hyper aware of others and very much disconnected from yourself and what you need. It almost always pulls you towards emotionally unavailable or inconsistent manipulative partners, not because you want chaos, but because you've been taught that love equals self-sacrifice. And the dynamic is always one-sided because that's all it can ever be. You're the one holding the relationship together while ignoring how unseen, unheard, and unsafe you actually feel. And when you finally ask for more, it's always going to backfire. Because this dynamic, it was never built to include you in the first place. It's all about the codependent serving the covert narcissist. So this is why healing codependency matters before you step into something new. True recovery means recognizing that love should never cost you your identity. Caretaking, that isn't the same as intimacy. And being chosen means nothing if you've had to abandon yourself to earn it. If you've ever found yourself playing the role of the giver, the fixer, the one who stays no matter how much it hurts, I need you to know that you've just been running on a survival pattern. It's a pattern that's kept you safe before, but we now know it doesn't serve you. And the fact you're here, that means you're ready to change it. So I'm really excited about this, and I hope you are too. Every tool that we've covered so far, from boundaries to nervous system regulation, from self-worth to emotional pacing, has brought you to this moment. But even if you've done all the work, fear can still show up. So this is why we need to talk about what fear really looks like after narcissistic abuse, because it's not always obvious. So in this next section, let's talk about it. We're going to touch on triggers, self-sabotage, and avoidant shutdowns. And we're going to look at how you can move through this fear instead of letting it run the show for you. Pillar 6, what to do with the fear. Fear after narcissistic abuse looks like overthinking what to text, cancelling a date last minute, criticising all of the kind people that you come in contact with because there must be a flaw there somewhere, obsessing over people who pull away. And deep down you think, why do I keep ruining this? But you're not actually ruining anything. You're just protecting yourself the only way that your body knows how. Self-sabotage, safety in the familiar. Self-sabotage isn't a flaw, it's a strategy. It happens when one part of you wants love, but the other part still believes that love equals pain. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull away. You're going to ghost. You're going to pick fights. You're going to focus on tiny flaws that you found that no one else can see. And this isn't because you're a heartless person, but it's because your body remembers what happened the last time you trusted someone. Self-sabotage is your nervous system trying to stay ahead of disappointment. It's trying to control the loss before it actually happens. Avoidant shutdowns, the emergency brake. Maybe you're on a date and suddenly you feel nothing. This person's kind, present, saying all the right things, but your body goes numb. That's not detachment. That's shutdown. That's your system saying, this is too much, too fast, shut it down, you need to protect yourself. You've entered into that freeze state. And this has nothing to do with you being cold or ungrateful. It's not that. It's because your past tells you that emotional closeness, it comes with a cost. So detachment for you became a survival tactic. Numbness became your way of staying safe. But what's happening now is that response is keeping you from connection. You want love, but your body still believes that isn't safe. So it freezes and shuts down. Triggers. Your body's memory system. When you've lived through narcissistic abuse, your nervous system stores that experience as a survival manual. So now, when something reminds your body of what it went through, even just subtly, it responds as if you're still in danger. Maybe someone doesn't text you back for a few hours and you feel your chest tightening. Maybe someone is calm and consistent, and for you it feels boring or suspicious, like they're planning something. Maybe someone compliments you and instinctively you flinch, wondering when the twist is coming, when the abuse is coming. And that's not you being dramatic, that's a trigger. A body-based memory firing off an alarm to try and keep you safe. Now here's what many won't tell you about triggers. You're not actually reacting to this person. You're reacting to then. To that time when you were being abused. To the version of you who had to stay hyper-aware to survive. So now, when someone says something even slightly in the wrong tone, when someone leans in with what feels like genuine warmth and vulnerability, you feel suspicious. Your body tenses, your thoughts spiral, and you start to prepare for this storm. And that's not because you're too sensitive. It's because your nervous system is doing what it was trained to do, and that's look for patterns. Look for patterns to keep you safe, and it's trying to recognize any danger before it even arrives. And unless you've learned how to pause, how to ground yourself and ask, am I responding to what's in front of me? Or what's behind me, your nervous system will convince you every single time that trigger, that's truth, and that your reaction is reality, and that your fear is very much real, but it's not. What you're experiencing is a learned survival response, not a prophecy. It's a pathway that your brain created to keep you safe, a pattern your body stored so it can anticipate pain before it even arrived. It's not your intuition speaking, it's your trauma remembering. One of the most common questions I get from women who are healing after narcissistic abuse is, but how do I know if it's a trigger or if it's genuinely my instinct kicking in? And yes, there is a difference. You see, triggers feel urgent, overwhelming and reactive, whereas instinct, it feels calm, clear and grounded. If you feel panicked, it's a trigger. If you feel steady, even when a little bit uncomfortable, that's likely your instinct trying to get you to listen right now. So next time you feel activated, I want you to pause and ask yourself, am I flooded with emotion? Or am I clear right now? Am I reacting from an emotional space, or am I responding logically? Is this about how I feel now or how I felt back then? And that moment of pause is so incredibly powerful because it teaches your body to respond from truth, from a logical place, and not from trauma, which is a reactive emotional place. Rebuilding self-trust. If you've been in survival mode for a long time, your body might not trust you anymore. That's the truth. It will remember all the times you ignored the red flags, all the times that you stayed too long, all the times you silenced yourself to keep the peace. So now you're going to doubt everything, even when it's good. But the good news is that trust, it can be rebuilt. Not by being perfect, not by finding the right person, but by making one aligned choice at a time. When you say no to something that doesn't feel right, you show your body it's safe and that it can trust you to protect it. So if you walk away at the first red flag and not the 15th, you're going to confirm to your body that there's growth and you're making good decisions. When you hold a boundary, even when it's uncomfortable, you prove that you've changed and you can trust yourself to make a decision when it doesn't feel right. And remember those times when you needed to choose yourself in that moment, but you would abandon yourself instead. This is when you're going to start to create a new pattern and you're going to rewire that so that eventually your inner voice changes from, I always mess this up, to, do you know what? I listened to myself and I was right. This is how self-trust is built, not through perfection, as many are going to try and tell you, but through pattern-breaking decisions made in peace, not panic. And yes, it takes practice, but this is a skill and it will change your life. If you've made it to the end of this course, I want to say this clearly. I am so proud of you. You've faced hard truths, you've reflected, questioned, and shown up to this. As someone who is brave enough to heal, and I know that this work is never easy, but I also know it is so worth it. So make sure you've downloaded the free workbook if you haven't already. The link is below. It is packed with journaling prompts and tools to help you go deeper. And remember, this video isn't going anywhere. You can come back to it anytime you need a reset, a reminder, or just someone to sit with you in those hard moments. And if there's anything you want me to go deeper in or give you more clarification on, put it in the comments and I'll do another video so that we can get more understanding around that point. And if you know someone who also needs this course, please send it their way. It could be their first step towards healing. My name is Rebecca P. Fox. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Please take care, guys, and I will see you in the next video.